Hello, my friends. It is Friday, March 14th, 2025, and this is the Daily Brief. So I've got some kind of bad news for you. And I also need you to stick around to the very end if you are interested in using your skills, if you have some kind of background in mechanical engineering or some kind of other technical field, engineering, cyber, those kind of things. I was talking about Technology United for Ukraine before, and I specifically need to talk to certain people who can lend their skills. So let's get into this. And again, Kursk is the big thing. We'll get to Kursk in just a moment. 1,410 Russians off the battlefield day over day. 6 tanks, 11 armored fighting vehicles, 46 artillery systems, 114 vehicles and fuel tanks. So again, here we're up to 1235, not quite the 1247. This is 1235. Here's 1247 of the past month, but it is climbing, and you can feel it climbing. Here are the losses that Andrew Perpetua could identify. And now you're seeing about a 2-to-1 ratio again, which is good to see because it's been upside down for the last couple of days. Okay. Russia bombs hit a hospital in a double tap attack. A hospital in the Kharkiv region was hit in a double tap strike, and this is how the Russians roll, right? Hit a hospital and then go after the people that are trying to save people there. Last defense intelligence update. Well, why are they worried about hospitals in Ukraine when they're not worried about hospitals, in Russia? At least 160 public hospitals were reportedly closed in Russia in 2024, including 18 maternity facilities, at least 10 children's clinics. Russian civilians in small towns and villages have frequently been with reduced or unavailable medical care as a result of the closures, including now limited to pre-hospital services. It's almost certain that the scale of the Russian casualties, 500,000 Russian service personnel wounded so far, continue to strain the Russian military medical system at all levels of medical care, causing significant logistical problems, resulting in shortage of military medical personnel, and this negatively impacts care delivery and has likely led to diversion of medical resources from the domestic civilian population. So the war is coming home in that way. Okay. Now, yesterday, there were no report of strikes on specific targets in Moscow. There were several drones that were shot down that caused little fires, but we don't know of any significant damage in any meaningful way. The SBU reported undated attacks on 2 Russian gas compressors stations in Tambov and Saratov Oblasts and a missile warehouse in Belgorod Oblast, and then Rosneft-owned refinery in Tuapse hit an overnight drone attack. Also, Ukrainian drone struck these compressor units. Okay, so is this having some effect? That's really the question that I wanted to raise here. And that, Russia has sharply reduced diesel exports to Africa following repeated drone attacks on its oil refineries. Remember, about a third of the budget goes to oil and gas exports and that sort of thing. In February, diesel exports to African countries almost halved from 1.2 million tons in January to 684,000 tons. Supplies to Brazil also dropped by 41%. Turkey, which is the largest buyer of Russian diesel fuel, reduced imports by 12% to 1.13 million tons. Total maritime diesel exports from Russian ports decreased by 15%. According to Reuters, in February, the volume of downtime at Russian refineries increased to 3.5 million tons. Well, that's the downtime, like they couldn't actually do this because of being hit. While in January, this figure was 2.3 million tons. This was caused in particular by emergency shutdowns of the Ryazan, Saratov, Zerzan, and Volgograd refineries. Overall, in February, Russia's exports of oil products fell by 7.5% compared to January and by 13.6% year on year. So these strikes are having a significant effect, hitting Russia in its pocketbook. Okay, let's turn our attention to the battlefield because we have a lot to talk about here. Per cross direction, Russian invaders led 41 assaults. You feel like it's starting to tick up in this region again. It's just been slowly doing that. While that's been slowly ticking up, these numbers have been slowly ticking up as well. So there seems to be a correlation there. Ukrainian forces have liberated substantial parts of Toretsk, punching into the southern parts of the ruins of this town. As I wrote a few days ago, this is Tender putting this out. I suspect Russians had to concentrate their troops in Kursk, and indeed they did, while getting pushed back in Pokrovsk, Toretsk, Chasiv Yar, and Kupian sectors. So they're making inroads, they're making headway, and it's really interesting to see. These guys here are almost surrounded. These Russians here. U.S.-made weapons continue to be actively used in Ukraine's battlefields despite a temporary pause. And now that pause was temporary. It was about a week, maybe less. In military aid from the United States, frontline troops in the eastern Donetsk region said that the pause had little impact, which is good to know that the pause did have little real impact on the battlefield. Planners might have changed what they were doing, but on the front lines, it didn't really have a great effect. Ukrainian forces recently advanced near Pokrovsk, and Russian forces recently advanced in Sumy. Sumy, we're talking about they're punching through on the north end in a place where they haven't been doing that before. Well, not since 2022. And near Liman, Seversk, and Toretsk. Okay, so the big problem here is going to be Kursk. After months of holding ground in Kursk, it's been about 8 months. It was about mid-August, early August. Russia's Kursk region, Ukrainian forces are retreating. You heard that right. Ukrainian forces are retreating. Meanwhile, elsewhere along the front line, Ukraine is pushing forward for the first time in a while. I just showed you that. So let me show you about the retreating here. So here is an image of like how they're attacking from all different sides, right? I mean, they're really just going after it. Okay, and here's Russian forces continue to clear Ukrainian forces from Sutsa and environs as Russian troops advance closer to the border in Kursk Oblast, slowed by March 13th compared to recent days. So they're still holding on. This is blue, and they're still holding on, but they're not really doing a lot to hold on. I mean, there's very little left in Russia proper, where they used to own a lot more real estate. Okay, let me show you on the map. This is the deep state map. So this is August 7th, 2024. This is August 8th. Now I'm going to skip week over week. So the 15th, yeah, see how they're gaining ground, and the 22nd, it's gaining more ground. Okay, and then the Russians are like, this is 2-3 weeks in, the Russians are starting to come to like do something about this. So this is 1 more week later, still gaining ground. 1 more week later, it's a little bit chipped away. 1 week later, chipped away some more. 1 week later, a little bit more of a chip. Now, remember, what they're trying to do is hold the Russians there so that the Russians have to come fight in Russia rather than in Ukraine. A little bit more of a chip, a little bit more, little more, little more, little more, and that wraps up October. Then November, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That wraps up November. Little more. Okay, and then not so much there, and a little bit more, and nothing by the end of December. There was like very little movement in December. January, little chip, bigger chip, almost nothing in the 3rd week, almost nothing in the 4th week, almost nothing in the 5th week. February, almost nothing, almost just a little chip, and then another little chip. So that was February. So now we're to March, and here's where it really gets real. Big jump in the 1st week of March. Big, huge jump in the 2nd week, and that's where we are today. Okay, so you saw visually like how it all played out, and the goal was to just attrit as many Russians as they could while they were kind of slowly moving backwards. Okay, new post by President Trump. So we had a really good, productive discussions with President Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, and there is a good chance that this horrible, bloody war can finally come to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in very bad, vulnerable position. I don't think that's right. That's not even true in Sutsa. Like in Sutsa, they can at least move back into their own country, right? That's not the problem. So they're hardly surrounded. Nowhere on the battlefield is this the case, to my understanding. I'm sure he heard that from Putin, though. I'm sure that's what Putin was telling him. I've strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. This would be a horrible massacre, and one not seen since World War II. God bless them all. Okay, Trump, you got to get your information from better sources. This is kind of pretty bad. Michael McKay writes, Ukrainian troops are not surrounded anywhere on the battlefront. That's my understanding as well. So Trump is serving the interest of the Russian invaders. And again, with the information war is very important as well. Last little thing, this is just a little political thing. Finland sends a Russian war criminal to prison for life. And I thought, wait a minute, you're not supposed to treat a warrior by a different thing. Like he's military, he's not what, but there was something different. A Finnish court has delivered a historic verdict, life imprisonment for a Russian citizen for war crimes in Ukraine. The former deputy commander of the Russian sabotage unit personally took part in the execution of at least 22 Ukrainian POW. Okay, so that's different. That's not the same thing. And I still think he should be charged by a war tribunal, but okay, yeah, he's committing legit war crimes here. So, okay. Now, this is what I was talking about that I need to talk to you about if you are interested in lending your talents. And I've talked about this before. Technology United for Ukraine. Like somebody was asking me, if you go to technologyforukraine.com, that's the website itself, technologyforukraine.com, you'll see an image of this kind of drone thing. And then there's a number of you that have already signed up. They're engineers. Some people have said, hey, there's no place to volunteer. Okay, if you go to the very bottom, it says volunteer, join our mission. And then there's a thing to sign up. It's full name, email address, phone number, location, occupation, and profession. Like what do you do? And then mention me in the process that I've sent you here because we're building out a group. Now, with that, I was in a conference call yesterday with these guys. So what we need most now, any kind of engineer, any kind of tech, any kind of those kind of personnel, and we're going to put out notifications for different folks along these lines. But so many of you have volunteered. We have a problem. We have a glut. We have more than we know how to handle right at this moment. So if you have already gone into that group or you want to go into that group and be helpful, work with the AFU on projects, what I need most are retired project managers. Like people that have time that they can dedicate to it. If you're a project manager and you have extra hours, that's good. We can help. You can help as well. But we really need people that can manage putting these groups together in a way that they can be effective as much as we need engineers. Like we need the engineers, absolutely. But we need retired project managers, retired engineers. Like you don't have to have a PMP certification. If you've worked on managing projects, that's fine as well. So if you are there, put that into the box here that you're a retired project manager, or if you're already in the group and you know where the group is and that sort of thing, you can just reach out to Brian and tell him I'm a retired. So I say retired because of the amount of time, because we'll put you to work. We need the help. But if you're a project manager, reach out to Brian. He will help get you oriented to what you need to do to start fleshing out groups. And yeah, that's what we need. Honestly, I think we need all kinds of talents, but that's what we need right now. And if you're in that group, just start talking about like what it is that what ideas that you have, so we can kind of get a sense of where you would need to go. I also think that if there's somebody now he didn't ask for this, but I think this is important. If you have a background, if you're retired and you have a background in like strategic HR, we need something with that as well to help flesh out the organizational structure. So if that's you, reach out to me directly. Go to my email on on YouTube. If you go to About, and you can find my email there. Okay, that's all that I have for you, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.